If you've been anywhere near TikTok over the last few weeks, you've probably seen Rahul Rai.
Hi, how are you? Sorry I've been ignoring you. I just was busy dancing, trying to get my work done, but now that I'm done, I'm all yours.
A guy talking to himself, playing his own girlfriend, playing his own kid, and making thousands of people collectively ask, what the hell am I watching? And honestly, fair, because I lost a massive amount of brain cells trying to do research for this deep dive. But here's the thing, the cringe isn't actually the interesting part of this story. So let's break down who Rahul Rai actually is, because it turns out this did not just start here. Long before he was talking to himself on TikTok, Rahul Rai, who is now a grown-ass 35-year-old man, was actually a working actor. He went through Pace University's performing arts program, and he was discovered at 18 by an actor who saw him performing with an Indian dance group in New York City. That led to his first film role in When Harry Tries to Marry, which actually had premieres at the Austin Film Festival and the Mumbai Film Festival in India. So this isn't some random guy who picked up a phone and started making weird videos. He had an actual acting career before any of this. He launched his TikTok back in March of 2020, and like a lot of creators during that time, his early content was just normal, low-stakes stuff like lip syncing and skits, nothing that would make headlines. While I was researching this, I found an interview where he talked about how TikTok actually started affecting his acting career. At that point, it wasn't just a hobby anymore. TikTok had actually become the main thing. But somewhere in there, he found his lane, and that lane was BookTok.
How to flirt with the woman right now, what would you say?
Rahul didn't just become popular with BookTok. He understood it well enough to parody it. One of his skits about finally reading the ACOTAR series has almost 8 million views. Now, I would never read ACOTAR, so while I was researching this video, I wanted to understand why those skits resonated with so many people at that time, a specific group of people. So I looked into the books themselves, and once I got a feel for what they're actually like, his content made a lot more sense.
I didn't want to eat with him, but I didn't have a choice. You look nice, he says. You, I say, but it's true, I do look nice. He'd forced me to wear a beautiful gown that was just my size, skinny, but I missed my old rags. They smelled like horse shit, they were mine. I look down at my food. You've probably poisoned it, I say sassily, but he takes a bite just to prove to me he hasn't. So I try it. Damn, the food is just as good as it looks, which makes me angry. I don't eat his fancy food. He smirks at me, an evil, sexy smirk that shows off his pecs. Ugh, I can't keep thinking like this. He literally kidnapped me. I don't need him.
In those books, everything feels heightened. Small interactions become just huge emotional moments. The love interest is intense in a weird way that the book frames as desirable rather than concerning, and everything is written to make you feel something. So when you watch Rahul's earlier BookTok skits with that in mind, you can see what he was doing. He wasn't just dropping random references for views. He was taking the tropes that people already loved and acting them out in an exaggerated way that felt funny to them because the audience recognized exactly what he was making fun of.
Show me again what you can do with that wicked mouth. I obliged him. What are you doing? What are you doing? Me? Nothing. I'm not doing anything. What do you mean, what am I doing? I'm just... Nothing. What's that on your lap? What's on my lap? I don't even know what this is, okay? A Court of I've never even heard of this book. You're reading my books. I am not reading your books. If by reading you mean just glancing over some of the words on the pages and picking them up with my brain, no, I'm not reading your book. What chapter did you read? Again, you keep saying I'm reading. I'm not reading the book. What chapter? I didn't read, but I glanced. Chapter 55. And what? What did you think? Honestly, it felt like she was inspired by Our Friday Nights. Oh, really? So in a way, this sort of feels like a biography. Oh, really? Yeah, me and you can write a better smut novel than this. Don't tell me with a good time. Well, I'm curious to see what that wicked mouth can do.
I think that's why he connected so strongly with women in that corner of BookTok. From the look of the profiles engaging with that content, a lot of his BookTok audience skewed middle-aged, which tracks since romantasy has a huge following well beyond teenagers. You don't accidentally make an inside joke that the inside group loves. If you're not familiar with BookTok, the romanticy community has its own language, running jokes, and favorite tropes. To parody that well enough that the fans themselves embrace you, you have to understand exactly what they're enjoying. It felt like he was making fun of the genre with them, not making fun of them. Now, that doesn't mean any of it aged well. Looking back, a lot of it reads as flat out objectifying and misogynistic. But at the time, enough women in that community probably missed that or ignored that and just saw the humor somehow, understood the references, and embraced him anyway. They didn't care. So once he had that trust, he pivoted into something else. And he became what an entire fan base started calling their internet boyfriend.
Do you guys just ever just want to cuddle with someone? Like, no makeout, no BJ, OJ, no J's, just a nice, like, on the couch hug and watch a romantic comedy. Just like, I'm getting intimate with my pillow later.
There's an actual internet boyfriend collection merch that he made. Also posts with captions saying, "Oh, thank you for your support. As your boyfriend, I will seduce, romance, and entertain you." Nasty, disgusting. And pillowcases and blankets with his face on them. One of his TikTok captions about those even said, "Yes, I put my face on a pillowcase for you to snuggle." And the funny part is women were actually buying this. The comments under this stuff are not subtle at all, with women joking about turning their brightness down so their husband doesn't see.
Your hubby's a good man. He's a lucky man, and I'm sure he knows that. And I don't want to get in the way of you and him. That's not what I'm doing here. It's not my game. But darling, what happens between you and me on TikTok stays on TikTok. So.
And women asking dead serious how this man is still single. One fan even used a Siri, find me a boyfriend sound and got him as the answer, and then showed off the merch to prove it. Some women went even further, making their own video stitching his video up as an example, basically saying, "This is how you're supposed to treat a woman. Men, take notes." So this wasn't just an audience passively consuming his content. It was an audience actively promoting it for him for free. It also wasn't a small following either. This was BookTok women specifically, fully invested and fully obsessed, actually buying into the fantasy of him.
This right here. The key to a good thirst trap. Yes, the abs and the body is great. It's all about the eye contact. Feel like I want you to look into my soul. Just like that.
What is this behavior? And to be fair, not all of this era was him talking to himself. Real women were duetting him, commenting, flirting back, and helping build that persona alongside him. So by the time we get to what's happening now, we're not talking about a guy who just came out of nowhere. We're talking about a guy who built and monetized a very specific persona on a very specific audience over years. So here's where it gets more complicated. Somewhere along the line, the content actually shifted, and this is the part people are reacting to now. He introduced two recurring characters, Bae, who is his fictional girlfriend, and Zane, his fictional son. And if you scroll his page today, Zane isn't even a one-off bit. This isn't something that slipped out just once. It's an actual content category on his profile, right next to dance videos and his YouTube clips, which means it's a series he's actively still making. Up until this point, you could agree that the content leaned into fantasy and thirst traps. Whether we liked it or not, that was the brand. But then another pattern started showing up. Some of the Bae content follows a pretty familiar formula. Completely ordinary moments get turned into sexual jokes. There's a skit where he's working out and Bae offers to wipe him down and ask if he needs her hand while he tries to get her to leave him alone. And there's another one where it's a conversation between besties where he asks what men look at first on an attractive woman.
When you see an attractive woman walk by, what do you look at first? Their boobs or their butt? I look at their feet first. Yeah, guys who like they go like this. Guys who like they go like that. Guys who like feet, what do? They just look down further south.
And even the safe answer isn't safe since it's delivered with the line, look down further south, which is really just a foot fetish joke, meaning there's no respectful option in that joke at all. Every version is still reducing a woman walking by to a body being scanned in parts. Strip away the joke and what's left is just straightforward misogyny. Women just being reduced to body parts and reactions. The Zane content is where that explanation starts falling apart. In one skit, Zane wakes up from what's clearly implied to be a wet dream about his arts teacher, and the whole bit is built around Rahul playing the dad, being pushed to have the talk with his son. In another, there's a reflex joke about a hot dog delivered through the kid character, and in an earlier soft top skit, Zane, a child character, is set up as someone the girls and women are going to love. That is absolutely not an ensemble bit with other actors involved either. It's Rahul alone cutting characters between playing the father and playing the son, meaning every line in these was written and performed entirely by one adult. And everybody on TikTok is currently creeped out. Everyone has noticed this. And also there's an actual change.org petition titled Ban Rahul Rai, which specifically calls out both of these patterns. The girlfriend content described as normalizing unhealthy ideas about relationship and consent, and the Zane content described as placing a child character in situations with sexual themes. He has since turned off the comments on his accounts entirely because of the volume of the backlash. So if this has been going on for years, why is everyone acting like they just discovered this? Because a lot of them did. Most people criticizing him today aren't the same audience that helped make him famous. They're discovering his content completely out of context. Years after those original BookTok videos blew up, some of what's getting dragged from 2020 is genuinely a product of that specific moment when everyone was stuck inside and a lot of creators were doing thirsty, over-the-top content, and also some jokes that got a pass back then just wouldn't fly the same way today. But let's really be clear about something. That explains the reaction gap. It doesn't excuse the content. The BookTok content and the boyfriend persona, that's a normal internet growth story. But the objectification pattern with women, and especially the Zane material, isn't a product of the COVID era. And it's absolutely not something that used to be fine at one point and now isn't. Using a child character to push sexual implication was never fine then or now, and the fact that he's still actively producing this content today, not just living it up from years ago, means this isn't an old chapter he's grown out of. It's an ongoing pattern. I also feel like there's a double standard here. If a woman had built her brand around this exact same style of thirst trap content in 2020, people would have been calling her attention-seeking, desperate, or saying she had no self-respect. Rahul got called the boyfriend material. That gap is part of why this got to run for as long as it did without much pushback. So here is my take on this. Rahul Rai didn't just wake up one day and become the internet's most confusing and creepy weirdo. He built a real audience on a real strategy, using real insider knowledge of a community that trusted him. And somewhere in that process, the content shifted into something that a lot of people independently across the years have flagged as genuinely very inappropriate. Which brings us back to the beginning. Everyone keeps calling Rahul Rai cringe, but cringe was never the story. Plenty of creators are cringe. The story is how someone who built an audience slowly shifted into content that many viewers now see as crossing a line. The problem is a documented ongoing pattern of sexualizing women in mundane moments and routing sexual content through a child character in form of comedy and monetized the whole way through. Also, this isn't about blaming women who loved his early content or acting like their comments somehow caused what came later. He is a 35-year-old grown man who made every single one of these choices himself alone on camera over the course of years. The audience that fell for the boyfriend persona in 2020 did not ask for Zane. That shift is entirely on him. I think calling his content cringe is very generous. A grown man repeatedly writing and performing sexual content through a child character isn't just cringe or awkward. It's very creepy, and it's the kind of pattern that deserves real scrutiny, not just the internet jokes. This is someone who, in my opinion, should actually be investigated, not just mocked in the comment sections. And I've watched more of his content than any person should ever have to, just for this video. And I've officially lost a lot of brain cells doing this breakdown. But that's kind of the trade-off of making a channel like this. Someone has to actually watch it to break it down, so you don't have to. But anyway, let me know what you think about this video. Please like and subscribe. I'm Angel Off Record, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!